Thanks, listeners, and welcome to another program here on Elko Live today. I'm your host, Lori Gilbert, and I'm sitting across from our Elko County School Superintendent. Welcome to the program, C.J. Anderson. It's always a pleasure.
Yes. Hi, Lori. Thanks for having me yet again.
Yes, thank you. And here we are on the doorstep of summer vacation. Although it's not really summer vacation for school administrators, a lot of site administrators. I mean, a lot of work goes on throughout the summer, but congratulations on another cool school year, huh?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of excitement. This week there's tons going on. I mean, even just on my way here, there was a parade of students that I can only assume were walking from one activity over to the next. I'm not exactly sure where they were going, but our students are out and about. There's lots of field trips, field days. Kids are having fun this week, celebrating a lot of hard work over the last 180 or so school days, and just really, really proud of them for working hard this year, and thanks to all the teachers and staff who make a lot happen. And you're right, from a standpoint, I've had a lot of people ask me the last week or two, like, are you excited for school to be over? Or is this going to be great? Like, you get a break? And I'm like, well, it doesn't really exist in the administrative world. Some people get to put the lesson plans away for the summer, and kids put the books down for the summer. But, as far back as 3 or 4 months ago, we're already engaged in plans for recruiting, hiring for next year, developing the 4-day school plans, which I know we'll probably talk about some, but just all the things that have to be done in preparation for next school year. I mean, we're barely a little over 2 months away from school starting, and there's so much that has to happen. So it all kind of blends together in the admin world, but very excited for the kids and for the staff that'll get that much needed break.
Yeah, and we'll of course give a nod to parents looking for activities, things to do throughout the summer, because that's always important. And as you mentioned, with the work going on, I imagine now you're just sort of kind of shaking down the final results of the legislative session, and I know the budget was contingent on a lot of those decisions that were made, CJ?
Yeah, and for those who may not have followed it, there was a pretty big, dating back even to January when the governor gave his State of the State address. He kind of teased there that he had big plans for increasing budgets for schools in the state of Nevada, and it pretty much held to what he said he hoped would happen. And I think it was, I probably should have remembered this number, but I think it's AB 503, if I'm not mistaken, is the education funding bill, which detailed very clearly exactly the dollar amounts that every school district would get for special education funds, for transportation, for English learner funds, for food service, for per pupil amounts, right? So all of those things were broken down in that way in that bill for every school district in the state, and we did. Just either late last week or kind of early this week, I think it was last week, we got updated numbers from the state about what that would mean for us. And so it does represent an increase of funds from what we have had the last couple years with the change from the Nevada plan to the pupil-centered funding plan. So there's good there. As we've talked about before, both from here and from other, board meeting microphones and other places, Elko County was one of the school districts that took a pretty good hit with the pupil-centered funding plan, where we not only lost per pupil funding, but we also had the net proceeds of mine sweep, and so we've experienced some budget difficulties as a result of those reductions in funds that we enjoyed before and anticipated having still. But so anyway, it comes at a time where we found ourselves like, hey, are we gonna have to make cuts to positions, that sort of thing, like really starting to worry about that. And then so to have the state infuse some money into the pupil-centered funding plan is great. It's even a little, I don't want to overstate things, because we still have to be fiscally careful and responsible. But it's even a little better than kind of what we anticipated in the kind of the aftermath of the governor's proposals. We sort of got some tentative preliminary numbers maybe back in like April, and they're a little better than that. So hopefully it means good things for our budget and helps us be in a place where we can worry less about I don't say worry less about the money. We need to worry about the money, but put our focus where it needs to be, and that's on the students and making sure our schools are everything they can be for our kids.
Oh, that's great news. And I know the last time we talked that you were concerned about maybe having to present some cuts. Is that a little less likely now, CJ, or would you say there's still some concerns on the table?
I mean, there are certain, we're always evaluating programmatically what we're doing, and so the concern was there's like a little bit of a perpetuating problem with the way the funding formula goes, in that there are certain areas, such as transportation, for example, where if you don't spend money on buses, then you don't get funded for money for buses. I tried to say it in the simplest terms. So because in the recent past our school district has not spent money on that, we therefore don't get funded for it. So then when we need to buy new buses, there isn't funding for those things. So we are trying to be forward thinking and making sure that we demonstrate the appropriate amount of need for areas that are funded based on a 5-year average, is how that works for transportation.
Like a GASB or a depreciation schedule, something like that?
Right. And so in order to ever get to the level of funding you want for that particular category, for example, you have to spend money to get that money. Otherwise, the assumption is made that you don't have a need. And the assumption is not made that the reason we're not spending is because we don't have money. So you have to kind of literally put your money where your mouth is, as the saying goes. So the worry was, obviously we always worry about positions. From a budgeting standpoint, our school, our general fund, our budget that we have, nearly 80% of that goes to positions, salaries, and benefits for our employees all across the district. Our wonderful 1,120, whatever it happens to be on that day, employees. So we're excited to be able to have that many employees and take care of them. But what that means from a budgeting standpoint is when you have to start making cuts, when almost 80% is to that, trying to make any significant change to the budget by cutting non-positional things is going to not have as great of an impact. And so lots of times that's where the attention goes is, oh no, if we're really going to make a difference, it might have to be in positions. And so we're not as that does not seem as real or a difficult decision right now for us anymore. But again, we're always evaluating those things. There are certain types of positions that lend themselves to always having to be there, right? Like you're always going to need X number of drivers to drive X number of routes. As long as you have a certain number of students, you're always going to need teachers for a certain number of classes. But then there are certain positions that come and go depending on need at a school, based on students' IEPs or on just lots of different factors. And so not that those are not necessary or important, because they are crucial, but when that need no longer exists, then the position may no longer exist as well. So not trying to cause there's no need for panic. No one's losing their job as a result of anything I'm saying here today. But just giving a little glimpse into how we have to look at that. So another big priority we had for this year was we really wanted to get back on schedule with updating curriculum. It had been years and years and years before, since some of these, really just English language arts reading, that was the only one that has been updated in the most recent past. And so for us to be able to get math going this year was awesome. For us to be able to plan to be able to do a curriculum every year is great, because that's often one of the areas that gets cut, like, oh, well, we just won't buy more books or more curriculum. And as time goes on, those things need to be replaced. They need to be updated. The state has certain requirements when the standards change, and so we have to keep up to date with those things, and we've got really far behind. So we're gonna be able to keep that on track. So it helps us stay on track where we need to stay on track, as opposed to falling behind again.
Well, congratulations on getting those math textbooks adopted K through 12. That was a big accomplishment, and many thanks to the teacher committee and the other people working hard behind the scenes, because they make it happen, CJ. That's cool.
It's a pretty monumental effort to study those, to implement them, to pilot them in classes, to give the feedback, to make the decisions, to work the amount that we were going to have to pay down to a more reasonable price. Like there's all sorts of efforts that go into making that a possibility. So yeah, absolutely. Big thanks to all the staff involved.
So the next topic that will switch gears a little bit, this would be Senate Bill 519 that was introduced late in the legislative session, and it kind of sucked the school district into something that was more of a direct impact to Elko County. I think some commissioners took it rather personally when there were efforts to define or enact this school tax, I guess if you will, to build a new campus for Owyhee. The students on the reservation there, and it's a done deal. In fact, there's a bill signing Tuesday, June 13th at 1 o'clock in Carson City. So the school district kind of got batted around a little bit in this, right, CJ?
Yeah. So SB 519 started out as a different bill, right? And that different bill was simply an appropriations for a school for Owyhee. However, it developed into something much bigger. So that bill in and of itself died, and then, or as they call it, it died. And then this new bill came out, which I've heard a lot of people refer to this as the Owyhee bill, and it's pretty important to note that this is a massive, expansive bill for all rural counties in the state of Nevada. I think the word is inexorably connected to this bill, because there is a statement at the bottom, or one of the items that does detail the appropriation for the Owyhee school. So that is a portion of this bill, and then there is an element of it that more or less requires our county and allows other counties to levy an additional tax beyond the tax cap in order to make sure that schools have capital improvement funds. But when you read the majority of that bill, it is all about funding mechanisms for all counties in our state that are under 100,000 in population, which is everyone other than Clark and Washoe. So that's that. I'm happy for what we are able to receive from that. It's certainly a massive benefit for the Duck Valley Shoshone Paiute tribe and the school in Owyhee that's going to be built as a result of this. But it's really a win for all rural counties that find themselves in a position unable to do anything significant with capital improvement funds. I mean, when you think about the size of some of those counties, even if they're levying, a good tax rate just on sheer population and how much money comes in from that, to build a new school, I mean, with construction costs the way they are right now, it's insane. People look at the amount that's being appropriated for the Owyhee school at $64.5 million, and they think, well, are we building, an eighth wonder of the world for them, or what's going on? But we're not. It's going to be a pretty normal kind of modern day school. It's not got all the bells and whistles. It's not going to be an exemplar school that is going to set a precedent for schools around the nation for a decade or anything. It's a school.
It's people have sticker shock, CJ.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the reality is that anyone who's tried to build a house during this time of year knows this. Anyone who's tried to have someone come out and pour concrete at their home during the last couple of years knows this. Everything about construction costs has significantly increased. We're seeing it in just about every project we do. And of course, in the case of public schools, projects of that magnitude are prevailing wage, and so the cost goes up there. And so the cost of these buildings, to get back to what I was talking about, makes it so that anyone who has some money coming in, it's never going to be enough to build a new school. So this mechanism of being able to levy that tax and then An important part of this bill is it creates a state account, and I don't remember the exact name of the account, but it's essentially a rural capital improvement assistance fund where they have money both for all rural schools and for schools on tribal land, for school districts and counties to be able to assign